5 heartbeats into boarding. A single misstep would shatter the calm of Sky Vista flight. Hey, a 7:32 to Emily Johnson adjusted her eyeglasses as she stepped onto the jet bridge at JFK. This was no ordinary flight. Today marked the rollout of Sky Vista's bold new transcontinental initiative, and Emily, the unassuming CEO, was traveling incognito to surprise her operations team in Los Angeles. Under the guise of Ms. Robinson, she wore a soft beige cardigan, dark slacks, and carried only a laptop tote and a small rolling suitcase. As she approached the cabin door, flight attendant Sarah Davis greeted her in the crisp navy uniform of Sky Vista Airways. Sarah, a 3-year veteran of the airline, took pride in flawless service. Yet this morning, her patience was frayed. The flight was full, boarding was behind schedule, and her crew had just weathered 2 crew swaps. She plastered a polite smile on her face and motioned Emily towards seat 12B. "Good morning, ma'am. If you could just stow your bag up here quickly, we're about to close the cabin door," Sarah said, nodding toward the overhead bin. Emily nodded and hoisted her laptop tote into the bin. She hesitated with the rolling case. "My vision's a bit blurry this morning," she replied softly. "Could you help me, please?" Before Sarah could respond, Emily's suitcase slipped from her grasp, tilting the bin door and sending the case crashing down. In the confined space of the aisle, the suitcase's handle whammed against Sarah's temple. Instinct and frustration collided. Sarah's hand flashed out, connecting with Emily's cheek in a sharp slap that echoed through the cabin. Several passengers gasped. One older man muttered an incredulous, "Oh my God," and another grabbed his phone to record. Stunned, Emily pressed a hand to her reddening cheek. Tears welled, not from physical pain alone, but from the sting of public humiliation. Sarah's face drained of color as the realization of what she'd done hit. She had struck a passenger. Within seconds, Captain Hernandez appeared, his flight deck headset still dangling around his neck. He placed a reassuring hand on Emily's shoulder and gestured to a flight attendant to escort Sarah to the back row. "Ms. Robinson," he said gently, "let's make sure you're okay. A medic will meet us on the ground." Emily forced a small nod, her heart pounding. Around her, the cabin fell silent. The only sound was the hum of the engines preparing for takeoff as the plane lifted into the clear blue sky. Emily stared out the window. She was hundreds of feet above the ground, yet felt the weight of every pair of eyes on her. And somewhere behind her, Sarah Davis sat in the last row, head bowed, grappling with the consequences of a moment's loss of control. Within moments of takeoff, whispers of outrage and fear began to flutter through the cabin like agitated birds as the engine's roar settled into a steady hum. Captain Hernandez's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. Thank you for your patience during boarding. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." Emily Johnson slid back into seat 12B. The cabin lights cast a gentle glow over her, but the sting on her cheek throbbed with each heartbeat. She closed her eyes briefly, inhaling deeply, ignoring the curious stares from fellow passengers. Across the aisle, her husband David offered a comforting squeeze to her hand, though Emily insisted she was fine. Inside, she was far from it. 2 rows back, Sarah Davis sat with her head bowed, uniform immaculate, but collar slightly rumpled. The weight of her actions pressed down on her like turbulence. She could hear snippets of gossip. Someone murmured that the attendant had lost her temper. Another whispered about a lawsuit. Worse, she sensed the judgment in every sideways glance from her own crew. Flight attendant Jenna Lee knelt beside Sarah. "Are you okay?" she asked, voice low and gentle. Jenna had witnessed the slap from the galley and had rushed back the moment she heard. Sarah's throat tightened. She found she couldn't look her colleague in the eye. I don't know," Sarah whispered. "I've never felt so ashamed." Meanwhile, Emily lifted her gaze. She watched Sarah, remembering the stewardess's crisp efficiency on countless flights, until today, when she'd snapped under pressure. Emily's heart wavered between anger and empathy. She had a choice: reveal her identity as CEO and command immediate discipline, or extend grace that a soft tap on her arm drew her back. A flight attendant offered her a bottle of water and a gentle apology on behalf of the crew. Emily accepted, nodding graciously. She addressed her husband quietly. "Let's stay calm. We'll see what happens next." The service began. Trays clattered down, Carts rolled through the aisles. The attendant who poured Emily's tea offered a warm smile and whispered, "Everyone's shaken. You handled that so well." Emily mustered a small smile in return, grateful for solidarity. From the cockpit, the captain's voice again, "We apologize for any disturbance. If you require any assistance, please press your call button." Passengers settled uneasily, some sharing their observations in hushed tones. A mother soothed her crying child. A businessman straightened his tie. A teenager fumbled with headphones. Through it all, the invisible line between passenger and staff blurred as the flight leveled out. Emily rose slowly, careful not to draw undue attention. She approached the back row where Sarah sat. The other attendant excused them, giving the two a moment. Emily's voice was calm but firm. "Sarah, I know you didn't see me as me today, but you saw me as a passenger in need. We all have moments we wish we could take back. I trust you can learn from this." Sarah's chest tightened. Tears welled as Emily placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. No titles exchanged, just two women connected by a moment of human fallibility. Sarah managed a trembling, "I'm so sorry." Emily nodded, compassion in her eyes. Returning to her seat, Emily felt a quiet resolve settle over her. The remainder of the flight stretched ahead, still tense, still fragile, but laced with a thread of understanding that perhaps, even at 30,000 feet, compassion could outlast conflict. One call, one identity, one mistake that would flip the airline's power structure midair. Captain Hernandez quietly stepped into the forward galley, phone in hand, brows furrowed. The message he had just received from HQ was impossible to ignore. It was flagged urgent, marked CEO security priority. He looked again at the name. Emily Johnson. It took him a moment to piece it together. Emily Johnson was not just a VIP. She was the CEO of Sky Vista Airways, traveling under the alias Ms. Robinson. The woman Sarah had slapped wasn't just a passenger. She owned the company. Captain Hernandez stepped back into the cockpit and hit the intercom to the lead flight officer. "We've got a situation," he said. "Notify the company hotline immediately. And make sure our cabin logs are secured. This will go straight to the executive board." Back in row one, Emily sat upright, face composed but stern. She pulled out her phone and, with a few swipes, drafted a confidential message to her chief operations officer. Incident occurred in flight. FA Sarah Davis made physical contact with passenger, myself. Proceed with protocol review. Suspend FA pending investigation. Will debrief upon landing. David, her husband, leaned in. "Are you sure about this?" Emily looked ahead, voice quiet but unshakable. "We lead by example. And no one, absolutely no one, puts their hands on a passenger." Meanwhile, Sarah sat in the jump seat near the galley, hands shaking. The humiliation was total. Other flight attendants offered her only glances, unsure what to say. The slap, the stunned silence, and now, the eerie absence of noise behind row one. It all pointed to something deeper brewing. Then it happened. First Officer Jenkins walked to the back, expression unreadable. He handed her a slip of paper. A printed message from corporate, routed through the crew comms network. Sarah read it. Then read it again. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "You are hereby suspended from all in-flight duties, effective immediately. Remain in seat until contacted by cabin security upon arrival. Await debrief. CEO on board." Her heart sank. CEO on board. She whispered to herself, eyes wide. It was her. The captain re-entered the cabin and stood beside Emily. Quietly, respectfully, he said, "Ms. Johnson, on behalf of the entire crew, allow me to express our sincere apologies. We will handle this internally and by your direction." Passengers began to pick up on the shift in tone. Whispers intensified. Something had changed. Nobody knew what exactly, but everyone could sense it. From the shadows of anonymity, Emily Johnson was stepping into the light. Not as a victim, but as a leader determined to correct the system that had failed, even her. The flight hadn't landed, but the investigation had already begun, 30,000 feet above the law. The atmosphere on board was strangely calm. No alarms, no panic, just the quiet tension of people pretending not to know what was happening. But everyone did. Whispers spread like wildfire. A few passengers checked Reddit and aviation blogs, already buzzing with the unfolding drama. One user posted, "Rumor, CEO on board Sky Vista 732. Flight attendant struck her. Internal investigation underway. In flight. At the front of the cabin, Emily Johnson, still going by Ms. Robinson to the passengers, put away her phone after sending her report to Legal and Human Resources. She wasn't just documenting what happened. She was rewriting the playbook. Behind her, flight attendant Sarah Davis sat frozen, pale, her crew badge tucked away discreetly. The galley felt like a holding cell. She had tried to draft an apology but deleted it before sending. There was nothing she could say now that would erase the moment when her hand had crossed the line. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, Captain Hernandez received another secure update on his tablet. Headquarters was mobilizing. The company's director of flight safety had been briefed. Emily's identity had been verified through a triple-tiered executive manifest, and they were instructing him to initiate Protocol 4A, the immediate isolation of any employee involved in a murder assault on an executive. He turned to his co-pilot. Prepare a report for FAA and company legal. The incident will trigger post-flight cabin review. Back in first class, a flight attendant returned with a new seat assignment request from a sympathetic passenger. Ms. Robinson, the gentleman in 3A offered to swap if you'd like more space, she said. Emily smiled slightly. Thank him, but I'll stay where I am. Her tone was calm, but everyone around her could sense the shift. This wasn't just a passenger. This was someone used to command. Sarah, watching from afar, finally stood up. She couldn't take the weight of silence anymore. Trembling, she walked slowly up the aisle. Passengers watched as she reached row 1. I'd like to apologize, she said, voice barely above a whisper. What I did was unprofessional and inexcusable. I understand I may lose everything, but I needed to say that. In person, Emily looked up. The red mark on her cheek was fading, but not the memory. She studied Sarah's expression, genuine, broken, terrified. For a moment, she said nothing. Then quietly, you did lose something today, your control. What happens next isn't about punishment. It's about whether we let this break us or make us better. Sarah's eyes welled with tears. She nodded. No defense. No argument. As she walked back to the galley, the plane continued toward Los Angeles. Outside, the sun glinted off the wings. Inside, unseen forces were in motion. HR departments, legal teams, and a CEO who refused to be just a headline. What had started as a slap had become something far greater, a turning point. The tires hadn't touched the runway yet, but careers had already landed or crashed. AS flight. A 732 began its descent into LAX. A calm voice filled the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. Please remain seated after landing. We are coordinating with airport services for an expedited deplaning. We appreciate your cooperation. Passengers exchanged glances. No one said it out loud, but they all knew something big had happened. Emily Johnson, still seated in row 1, refreshed her inbox one last time. Legal had responded. HR was already coordinating a meeting. The airline's PR department was on standby. Everything was in motion. And she was no longer just reacting. She was leading. Sarah Davis, in the back of the plane, remained silent. Her name had been added to an internal report. She would be met by an airline official at the gate. It was over. But what haunted her more than the slap or the consequences was that she had failed the very values she once believed in. The cabin grew still as the wheels touched down. The subtle bump, the roar of reverse thrust, the collective exhale of 200 people who'd just flown through more than turbulence. As the plane taxied to the gate, a uniformed airline official boarded discreetly and made his way to Emily. He addressed her with the formality of someone speaking to royalty. Ma'am, if you're ready, we've prepared a private corridor to escort you through. Emily rose, buttoned her cardigan, and turned once more towards Sarah at the back. Their eyes met across the length of the cabin. No words were exchanged, just a look that said, "This is bigger than both of us." As Emily stepped off the plane, the whispers resumed behind her. Some called her brave. Others called her the face of accountability. But only a few knew the truth, that she hadn't wanted this moment. It had been forced on her. And now, she would use it to reform the very system she led. Within 24 hours, Sky Vista Airways released a statement. Our highest standards of professionalism must begin with how we treat every passenger, no matter their status. We are implementing mandatory retraining, anonymous incident reporting, and increasing transparency across all flights. Our CEO, Ms. Emily Johnson, has taken a personal interest in ensuring this never happens again. Sarah Davis submitted her resignation 2 days later. In her farewell letter, she didn't make excuses. She wrote, "I failed to protect a passenger's dignity. But this moment reminded me why we must never lose sight of who we serve and how quickly trust can be broken." Emily never publicly mentioned the slap, but during a press conference weeks later, when asked what she learned from that flight, she said, "You can't lead from behind tinted glass. Sometimes, to see the truth, you need to sit in seat 12B." And with that, a slap turned into policy. A breakdown became a breakthrough, and a flight turned into a lesson that every employee and every airline would never forget.